Hi, I'm John White, Dean of Libraries at the College of Charleston, and thank you for joining us today. It is a real pleasure to be here with this year's Governor's Awards and winners in the humanities, Michael Allen, Jannie Harriot, and Simon Lewis. We're going to ask our award winners a few questions related to their careers in the humanities and how others may be able to follow in their footsteps and make the type of community impact and cultural impact that our award winners have made throughout their careers. The first question, and I'll start with my friend and colleague at the College of Charleston, Dr. Lewis, and then if our other award winners could join in after, I would appreciate it. So Simon, what was it that first excited you about the humanities? And how did you take that excitement and interest and curiosity and translate it into a successful career?
Gosh, so I think you'd probably have to go back to, being a kid and just loving reading. And most of my career has been more accidental than planned, I would say. But when I was a young person at school, I was thinking I would perhaps be a lawyer or maybe a journalist. I ended up reading English at Oxford, and everybody would say to me, "Oh, you're going to be a teacher." And I was resisting that most of the time and said, "No, I'm not going to be a teacher." That seemed like a very narrow sort of thing to go into. But once I actually started teaching, because that's the way life happens, right? Things happen to you as well as you plan them. I think I gradually embraced that. And then when I finally got my PhD and moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and Charleston and South Carolina are just such amazingly interesting places. Although I'm teaching in an English department and I'm teaching African literature, South Carolina's history and its role in the Atlantic world has just been so fascinating to me that my curiosity was completely piqued by that, and I was very keen to make sure that other people understood what was so interesting about this place, and particularly how it was formed by an Atlantic world, not just by American principles, but by circulation of peoples and things and ideas around the Atlantic world. So,
thank you.
I don't know that I even knew what humanities was. And I think I still don't know. As I said in my remarks, I'm a business major. I did end up teaching, but it was business. And then I worked in the corporate world. The way I got involved is I was trying to keep Walmart from making my high school into a super Walmart. And with the creation of the South Carolina African American Heritage Commission and seeing the work that all these wonderful historians on the commission was doing and thinking about what I would like for my nieces and nephews to know about the contributions of African Americans to South Carolina started me in, what is the history of our state? Because they didn't teach it when we were in school. And then what are the contributions of African Americans? And how can I help children other than my nieces and nephews know about this wonderful cultural enriched state and the people who contributed? So that's how it got to be my interest. And then the first time I wanted to do a program, somebody said, "Well, get a grant from the humanities." I said, "And what is that?" And so it's just been an evolution and a wonderful learning experience for me.
I think growing up in Kingstree and being able to see both my parents, my mother and father, being active in the community, for me was a foundation. My mother taught adult education. She was a poll manager, poll watcher. She drove folks to the poll to vote. My father as well joined her in that quest. So I think at a formative age, seeing them working with the community and working with the public was an inspiration. And probably like Jannie said and Simon said, it was my intention to go to college and become a teacher. But history, I guess, changed my life and my attitude about teaching, but it put me in another course. So in many respects, maybe the things I've been engaged or been involved with has a foundation of what I saw my parents did as role models in preparing me to work in a more public arena. I just took what I gleaned from them, what I gleaned from others as I grew older, the opportunities that were afforded to me, the challenges that were before me, but the problem solving that I guess was within me allowed me to do the things I've been involved with over many years.
Thank you. So now that we've talked about your experience and how you became involved in the humanities, what advice would you give young people or students who are seeking a career in the humanities? What are the pathways forward for them, and how would you encourage them, or would you encourage them to seek a career in the humanities?
Start the same sequence again. I'd encourage them to get stuck in, and I would say, there are these amazing institutions and structures that they can take advantage of, and I would say, make connections with those organizations to keep it rolling, because really, to get a little philosophical here, I mean, if you want to leave a mark, you really need not just to leave your own mark, but you need to be part of something that's bigger than that. So I would say get stuck into your various different cultural organizations, professional associations, South Carolina Humanities, NEH, all of those sorts of things, and then do what you can to maintain them. Don't just do the things that are put on a plate for you by South Carolina Humanities or colleges or whatever it is, but actually take an active part in them and maintain those structures and keep them rolling forward. I don't have a lot of time for those academics, for instance, who go to conferences and just sort of don't actually attend the conference, but they present their own paper and then they go away again, as if that was there for them and nobody had put any effort into doing it. You've got to take, I think, an active role in making those things keep rolling, because that's really, really important. Those are the kind of cultural legacies we need to leave behind ourselves, not just about the individual.
I would take a different approach. When I was teaching, of course, I taught business. And I would say to my students, find your passion. What is it that you're passionate about? And the humanities, as Simon pointed out to us earlier, runs through all of that. If you are a doctor, be immersed in the cultural institutions in your community. Art runs through all of us. I tell people all the time, I have some very talented siblings and nieces and nephews. They're artists, they're musicians, they're writers. I tell them, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, but I can talk, and that's my gift. And so find your passion. Find what it is that you like to do. Because I can talk to people about preserving history and about the culture. And so that would be my path and would be my admonishment to students. Find what it is you like to do. Someone once says, when you do what you like to do, you never work a day in your life.
Is that so? I've come to a place and a space now where I'm looking at how can I encourage the next generation to be involved, to be passionate, to be engaged. And as I shared earlier today, we do need this new generation. But the three of us have done wonderful things, great things, but there are some things we haven't touched. They are. And we can acknowledge that publicly and not be ashamed of that. And so I think at my age and time and space, at least on this earth now, I'm about encouraging a newer, younger generation to take up the torch, carry the mantle, and do things that I only thought about, talked about, but was unable to accomplish that. But the way we have to do that is that we have to be transparent ourselves. Wherever I go, I talk about the challenges that I face, the successes I may have been involved with, the failures that came along the way, and then hopefully that would encourage someone not to be uncomfortable in stepping in. All three of us know that the pathway that we have taken on many occasions is a lonely pathway. We got our families, which is grateful, and we're grateful to them, but on some occasions, just us. And so when we step out there, when we make decisions, when we say things, sometimes we say, wow, did I really say that? Should I have said that? And is that possible? But we're old enough now to be able to acknowledge that, but we're in a place and space now where we really want to encourage another and a younger generation to pick up the torch and go beyond where we may have traveled.
If I could also add, within the last 6 months, my cadre of nieces and nephews have said to me, Aunt Jannie, we want to learn what you do. We want to know how you do what you do. And so a few weeks ago, they said, we want to start our own nonprofit, and we want you to teach us. So I think the lives that we lead, how we live our lives, is going to influence the next generation. I am so honored that they want me to teach them. And I said to them, great. I don't have any money to leave you, but this I can leave you.
Thank you. So as three people who, obviously by the awards you've been given, your accomplishments, both professionally and personally, you have witnessed a number of changes and challenges in humanities, particularly in public humanities, over your career. What challenges do you anticipate dominating the humanities and humanities education in the next decade? And how have things changed for you during the course of your career that lead you to those conclusions?
Well, let me build a bridge to the question that you posed. Janie, remember this. Somewhere in the fall of, I think, of 1999, she and I and a couple of individuals were gathered in a room led by a staff of Congressman James Clyburn. And that staffer told us that the congressman was going to ask the National Park Service to begin some type of study or look, if you will, into the history, culture, legacy, experience of Gullah Geechee people. Sitting in that room, we didn't know what would be the outcome of it. We had to have enough faith in the words that were spoken to us to believe it. And I use that as a prime example because when that was spoken to us, the depth and breadth of Gullah culture was not being celebrated as it is now in 2021. And now here we are in 2021, and there's in many respects, a systematic move to erase history. To put us in a place that the things that we saw or read or know to be true did not happen. So I think for historians, for folks in the public arena, for researchers, or whomever that may be walking forward in terms of the humanities, this force, I use the word force, this effort to erase what we know to be true will be the defining challenge that folks will face. I mean, we face that now in the work that we do here in 2021. Imagine what folks may run into 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And so for me, I think that's a defining challenge that's before us because of political reasons, because of economic reasons, because of social reasons, because of psychological reasons. That's something that we will face, unlike this nation and our community and our state probably have ever faced.
And I think that what Michael said brings up the fact that until we all see ourselves as one people, many colors, many nationalities, many faces, many talents. I think about the project that we just started this last year, as a matter of fact, Black Carolinians Speak, Portraits of a Pandemic. When Michaels was standing in that line at Walmart, He didn't know that there was nothing at the Department of Archives and History that talked about the pandemic of 1918, was it?
1919, yes, ma'am.
1919 was actually the year my father was born. And for us to be able to capture those voices means that things are happening. But for the fact that we had to start with no money because the powers that be does not see the value in capturing the voices of the people. And so I think that's going to continue to be a challenge. How do we do what we do? Because it's all about economics as well. You can't do this work just on, I'd like to do this, because that's not the world that we live in. So the challenge is going to be recognizing that we're all one people. We need to value everybody and everything that people do. And then the powers that be understand that it's also about economics.
Thanks. Yeah. So a lot has to do with records, and John, you're a librarian, and so yeah, we've got to keep records, right? And one of the things I perhaps regretted in some of the things that we've done with the CLAW program is we haven't actually kept photographs or video of certain things. And one thing that's very, very vivid in my mind is the moment in the Toni Morrison Society conference that we had where Toni Morrison came and inaugurated the first bench by the road there on Sullivan's Island. And you know probably that I don't have a cell phone, but I do recognize that sometimes they're really quite useful. And I borrowed a cell phone because I thought I'm going to capture this moment. And then, of course, I filmed it and then I lost it, because that is part of the problem, I think, with digital records, is that even if we keep digital records, we're not sure that the digital platforms are going to remain the same and that we're still going to be able to maintain things. So there's a strange thing, I think, going on at the moment where on the one hand, we have the best opportunity we've ever had to keep recordings of things because everybody can do it, because everybody has these amazing computers in their pockets, right? But at the same time, people can manipulate those things, and so we've got all of genuine fake news, if you know what I mean, as opposed to fake news. That's knocking around the place that we have to deal with. So we've got to try to record everything, and we can do that, and we can broaden, I think, enormously the reach. I'm thinking about something like Low Country Digital History Initiative. There's some amazing animations. For instance, that animation of the transatlantic slave trade that I'm sure you guys have seen, where you just see these little dots going across the Atlantic, and then you see them speeding up in the middle of the 18th century. And that's absolutely brilliant. We couldn't have imagined something like that when we were at school or university. So we've got tremendous opportunities now with digital methods of recording, but there are all sorts of problems associated with that, fakery and the impermanence of many of them.
You're absolutely right, Simon. And one of our commission members, Dr. Barbara Jenkins, who is a librarian, she says, Jannie, we got to write it down. It's got to be on paper. It's got to be recorded. And of course, that's another challenge, because we keep hearing, well, there's no funding for printing. We can't print this. But one of the things that we've decided, specifically with Black Carolinian Speak, everything must be translated to some paper. So we have the digital records of all of our recordings, and we are also transcribing them. So we will have that documentation as well, especially for those of us of our generation. We want a piece of paper that we can look at.
Thank you. Well, you've all touched on this a little bit, but anytime that I'm given the opportunity to share the stage with people who are known to get into a little good trouble now and then, I like to ask, what advice do you have for other humanities professionals and people in the field on how they should deal with problematic or challenging histories, especially during times of deep political division over historical events, culture, and how we view and see the past and how we interpret memory.
Well, I think I'm probably the best person to answer that question. As John Lewis says, I get in trouble, but it's called good trouble. Be true to yourself. Be true to your values. Speak your mind may get you in more trouble. It gets me in more trouble than I care to sometimes. But I tell people all the time, when it comes to the truth, my mouth has no filter. And I'm not going to carve my truth to fit your issues, whatever you feel, whatever you're going to have some issues about. I can't do anything about the past, and we can't change that. It is what it is. It's ugly in South Carolina. We need to admit that it's ugly and do something about it and stop trying to pretend that it didn't happen.
I think you have to be comfortable and confident in yourself, first of all, and if an opportunity arises where you really have to speak truth to power, do it. I'll give a quick scenario. Unfortunately, we're aware and know of the tragic event of Mother Emanuel and what was carried out in the basement of that church. And that basement is a part of who I am sitting here, as part of my history and my public life. Within days of that event, it became known that the perpetrator of this crime, maybe out of some sort of unknown ignorance, visited historic sites all across the state and specifically in the Lowcountry. One of the sites that he came to was on Sullivan's Island at Fort Moultrie, and he stood in front of a historic marker that I helped to write, draft, dedicate, and some of you all in this room were there in the summer of 1999 when it was placed there. When I became aware of that, and when I saw photographic evidence of that, 2 o'clock in the morning, I sent an email to the director of the National Park Service. And I said, Mr. Director, you need to be aware that the perpetrator of this heinous crime in the basement of Mother Emanuel visited one of your National Park Service sites here in South Carolina. I said, here's photographic evidence. He specifically stood adjacent to a historic marker that's adjacent to your Park Service site. He may have gone to the bathroom at Fort Moultrie. He may have bought a book. He may have watched a movie. He may have taken a tour. I do not know that. But you need to know that this gentleman came to one of your park sites, and this was done in a way of being subversive. And you need to know that. And I said, I would furthermore ask you humbly to potentially send some sort of acknowledgement letter to the staff of Fort Sumter, acknowledging what you know about this and some type of, condolence to the staff, because they were challenged by this, and potentially to every National Park Service employee, because this was a desecration of a park site. Within 1 week, the letter I suggested went out to the staff of the park and to every staff person in the National Park Service with this caveat. Now look at your exhibits, look at your displays, look at your waysides, look at your bookstores to see what type of narrative that you might be sowing that you would, quote, invite this type of attitude to come to your park site. Now, I didn't say this publicly for a long time after the fact, until I kind of felt comfortable to say it. And then some folks came and said, well, why didn't tell the park superintendent this happened and let him send the letter up? Or why didn't you call the folks in Atlanta and have them send the letter up? I said, because they were not equipped. They didn't have the sensitivity or the wherewithal or the capacity to be able to place it in the language that I did. So when you're comfortable about a thing, and when you're sure within yourself, then you can tackle and take on things that may be controversial, and here's the outcome out of it.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to say anything after that, but I mean, honesty is fundamental, right? And to be honest, you also have to be as convinced as you can be that what you think you know actually is the truth. And you know, we're all tainted by, you know, our backgrounds. None of our knowledge is actually full. So we have to be conscious of the fact that we're always speaking from within a particular context. But as long as you are confident enough that the things that you know are genuinely true and are not actually biased by all sorts of things, then I think you absolutely have, Jannie, the right to say this is the truth, and the truth is not going to be filtered, and you speak out as clearly and plainly as you possibly can. And that, I think, needs always to be governed also by another principle, which to me is fundamental, which is the idea of fairness. And that should be the goal of what you're doing. And probably the only time that you would filter an honesty is if you think, actually, this is not going to better that goal of fairness. Michael, since you brought up Ruth, and this speaks a little bit to Jannie's comment too, pronouns are really important, because who are the we that you are speaking as? And when Ruth, in that basement, spoke for we, meaning we white people, I want no part of that. I want absolutely no part of that. And I do not want to be speaking as a we and meaning we white people. It would be nice if nobody had to speak as we in terms of a color or a nationality or an ethnicity. But that particular group pronoun I want to have nothing to do with, especially when he was invoking it in a particularly obnoxious way.
And can I add something? I'm glad you brought up the use of pronouns, because that was a challenge to me at the beginning of my career when I was working at Fort Sumter, when people would say, well, we were over there and they were there, and where were you? And I kept thinking, wait a minute, this is 1980. This is not 1862 or 61. And it was consistent. So I had to program myself to be able to, I guess, be like a GPS to figure out where they were when they said we were over there and they were there. Because I never had a conversation with folks where they were transposing themselves back into the midst of a battle and expect me to understand that and expected me to be in agreement that they were over there and you were there with them as well.
Well, you know, it's funny you bring that up, because about a week ago, I was in the grocery store and paying for my groceries, and these 3 white checkout clerks said, well, he just said, don't say y'all. And so I don't understand why that would be offensive. It is offensive. If you know the history of y'all and what what makes me angry is for someone who is white to constantly refer to me and people in my race as y'all. And quite often there are people, I was having a conversation with some professionals who are historians supposedly, and they kept saying, y'all do this and y'all want to do that. And I'm like, please don't say y'all again. They totally ignored me and kept saying y'all, not understanding that it is offensive to me. And had I said some other thing white to them, that they would have and jumped up all around. But and I think that sometimes it is done without knowledge of how offensive it is, and so you want to forgive them. So when you correct them, but if I correct you and you continue to, well, you're going to get the wrath of Jannie Harriot.
Well, I think that's a good place to end today's discussion. I don't think anyone can follow that. I want to thank all of our panelists, our organizers. Thank you to everyone who is listening online and viewing this recording. And please follow up by visiting the South Carolina Humanities website, its social media, and continue to follow along this wonderful organization, because as we learned today, humanities matters, and it matters in more ways than simply recording and documenting history. It's a living, breathing thing. So thank you all, and congratulations on your award.